The desert was a graveyard. Endless dunes stretched beneath a burning sun, their curves shaped by wind and time, indifferent, eternal, and cruel. The air shimmered with heat, and in the distance, a lone vulture circled lazily above the bones of something long dead. Through the silence came the low growl of an engine. A sand-coated truck carved its way across the wasteland, wheels biting into the dust. Behind the cracked windshield, Adrian Cruz sat with eyes fixed on the horizon, his jaw clenched, his stubble darkened by sweat and grit. His hands, scarred, strong, and steady, gripped the steering wheel with the same control he used to grip a rifle. He wasn't just driving through the desert. He was driving through ghosts. Beside him sat Rafael Rafe Morales, a man Adrian once called brother. The lines on his face were deeper now, the years etched in the corners of his eyes. A jagged scar ran from his temple down to his cheek, a scar Adrian didn't remember giving him. They hadn't spoken in almost 2 hours. Only the wind and the engine filled the space between them. Finally, Rafe broke the silence. "Still can't stand the heat out here, huh?" he said with a faint smirk. Adrian didn't look at him. "You never could stand the truth," he muttered. The smirk vanished. Rafe turned his eyes back to the road. They were heading deep into cartel country. Los Cuchillos del Sol, the knives of the sun. Once, Adrian and Rafe had been their enforcers, soldiers in a private war that didn't make the news. Smuggling routes, assassination contracts, desert ambushes, they'd done it all. For money. For survival. For Isabela. Isabela Cruz. Adrian's sister. Rafe's wife. Her smile was still carved into Adrian's memory, bright and defiant even in the darkest days. She had been the only light in their world of sand and violence. Until the night it all burned. That night a deal had gone bad. Ortega's men ambushed them on the border. Adrian had barely escaped alive, dragging wounded soldiers through the dirt. Rafe had disappeared, along with the intel, the cash, and the woman who had been Adrian's reason for breathing. When the smoke cleared, Isabela was dead. That was the night Adrian buried his heart, and the name Rafe Morales. Now years later, the man who'd caused it all was sitting beside him again, speaking like nothing had changed. "Ramon Ortega's moving his entire network tonight," Rafe said, his voice low and deliberate. "Weapons, money, and information, everything. One clean sweep and he's untouchable. We hit him now, we end him." Adrian's grip tightened on the wheel. "You really think I'd trust you again?" "You don't have to trust me," Rafe said. "You just have to hate Ortega more than you hate me." Adrian shot him a cold glance. "You'd be surprised what I hate more." They drove on, the truck bouncing over rough ground, the setting sun bleeding red across the sand. The desert around them came alive in the dying light. Rusted oil drums, burnt-out vehicles, half-buried skeletons of past wars. Ahead, through the haze, the outline of an abandoned fuel depot emerged, Ortega's outer post. Adrian parked behind a cluster of rusted tanks. The engine died and silence returned, heavy as the heat. He checked his rifle, clean, loaded, oiled to perfection. "This is it," Rafe said, adjusting his scope. "We take this outpost, we cripple his supply lines. We get his attention." Adrian nodded but said nothing. They moved in tandem through the dust, 2 soldiers, shadows of what they once were. The first guard fell without a sound. A quick chokehold, a silent drop. Rafe covered the door while Adrian swept the perimeter, every movement a perfect blend of discipline and instinct. Inside the depot, flickering lights revealed a makeshift control room, crates of weapons, fuel drums, maps pinned to walls. Rafe signaled toward the main chamber, where Ortega's lieutenants were gathered around a table. Adrian lined up his shot. Then he paused. Through the crack of the door he heard voices. One of them, familiar. "Cruz still trusts me," the voice said, low but clear. "Once he clears the guards, we'll double-cross him. Ortega gets his shipment, I get my cut." Adrian froze. His stomach turned to iron. He looked at Rafe, who wasn't looking back. Rafe's jaw was tight, his hand slowly moving toward his pistol. "Still making deals, huh?" Adrian said quietly. Rafe didn't answer. Adrian's fingers slid to his trigger. "Tell me it's not true." Rafe's eyes flicked up, regret flickering for half a second. I didn't mean for her to die. The room exploded. Gunfire ripped through the depot. Bullets tore through crates and metal walls. Adrian dived behind cover, returning fire with brutal precision. Guards screamed and fell as flames erupted from shattered fuel drums. "Rafe?" Adrian shouted, but his voice was swallowed by the chaos. Through the smoke he caught a glimpse, Rafe running. Not toward him but away. Toward a black SUV parked outside. "Coward!" Adrian roared, unleashing a burst of gunfire that shattered the windshield, but the SUV sped off, disappearing into the storm of dust and fire. The outpost burned. The night sky glowed orange, and the desert wind carried the scent of diesel and blood. Adrian staggered from the wreckage, the flames reflecting in his eyes. Around him lay the bodies of men who had followed orders, fought wars and died for lies. He knelt beside one of the fallen guards and saw a patch on his uniform, the insignia of Los Cuchillos del Sol, the same cartel he once served. The same that had betrayed him. He took a deep breath, feeling the desert heat scorch his lungs. The past was gone. The brotherhood was gone. The mercy, gone. Only vengeance remained. Adrian stood, the wind tugging at his tattered shirt, his rifle slung across his shoulder. The rising sun painted the horizon in blood and gold. "This isn't over," he whispered. "You hear me, Rafe? It's never over." Far beyond the dunes, a lone SUV disappeared into the desert haze, carrying a man haunted by guilt, and another betrayal yet to come. And as the day broke over the wasteland, the desert whispered back, carrying Adrian's vow through the wind. No one escapes the sun. The desert never forgot. It held memories the way bones held scars, buried deep, silent, waiting to be uncovered. 3 days after the betrayal at the fuel depot, Adrian Cruz walked beneath the blazing sun with nothing but a rifle, a half-empty canteen, and vengeance burning in his chest. Every step stirred up dust that clung to his boots like ghosts. The horizon shimmered endlessly, but his mind was sharper than ever. He was no longer chasing a man. He was chasing a shadow that had once called him brother. Rafael Rafe Morales. Each night, Adrian camped under the open sky, listening to the wind howl like the voices of the dead. Each dawn, he followed tire tracks, whispers and rumors, through border towns, smuggler trails and the ruins of forgotten wars. In Santa Perdita, a town swallowed by the desert and cartel control, Adrian finally found a lead. The cantina reeked of sweat, tequila and fear. The men inside spoke in low tones, their eyes always flicking to the door. When Adrian stepped in, sun-scorched, blood-stained and silent, the room went still. He ordered water. Then, without looking up, he slid a photograph across the counter. An old, torn picture of Rafe and Isabela smiling under a desert sunset. "Have you seen him?" Adrian asked. The bartender's hands trembled. "That man, he rides with the Cuchillos del Sol now. Works directly under Ortega's new lieutenant. They call him El Fantasma. The Ghost." Adrian's jaw clenched. "Where?" The bartender hesitated, eyes darting toward the back of the room. "Old refinery. Southridge. But you didn't hear that from me." Adrian stood, dropped a handful of coins on the counter, and left without another word. Outside, the sun bled red into the sky, a warning painted in fire. Night fell over the desert like a predator. The old refinery loomed in the distance, its rusted towers reaching for the moon. Floodlights swept the sand, and men with rifles patrolled the perimeter. Diesel fumes mixed with the stench of decay, a place built for death, not life. Adrian crawled through the dunes, eyes locked on the target. His movements were slow, deliberate, honed by years of warfare. Every sound mattered, the scrape of metal, the hum of engines, the distant echo of laughter. Through his scope he spotted him. Rafe. Standing near a shipment truck, barking orders, dressed in cartel black, the Ghost himself. Adrian's breath hitched. For a moment, the memories came flooding back. Isabela's laughter, Rafe's loyalty, their promise to build something better after the war. Then came the fire. The screams. The betrayal. Adrian's finger hovered over the trigger. But a flash of movement stopped him. A woman, blindfolded, hands bound, being dragged from one of the trucks. Adrian's stomach dropped. She looked like Isabela. He shook his head. No, it couldn't be. His sister was gone. He'd seen the grave, buried the ashes. But the resemblance was undeniable. The curve of her face, the way she struggled, she could have been her twin. Something inside Adrian snapped. He moved before thought could catch up. He cut through the perimeter with the precision of a predator. One guard silenced with a blade. Another dropped by a muffled shot. The refinery became a maze of fire and shadow. He reached the holding area, yanked the blindfold off the woman, and froze. She wasn't Isabela, but she knew her. "Why, you're Adrian," she gasped. "Isabela's brother." Adrian's heart pounded. "Who are you?" "My name's Lucía Vega. I worked for her, before she died." Her voice trembled. She found something before the ambush, proof Rafe was working with Ortega. She tried to stop him. Adrian's chest tightened. The heat in his veins turned to ice. "She died because of him," he muttered. Lucía nodded. "And he's still covering it up. That's why Ortega made him lieutenant. He traded her life for power." Adrian's eyes darkened. "Then tonight he pays." He handed her a pistol. "Stay behind me." They moved through the refinery like wraiths, cutting down anyone who stood in their way. The air filled with the sound of gunfire, shattering glass, and screams swallowed by explosions. Flames licked the walls, turning steel into liquid fire. Rafe appeared at the upper walkway, silhouetted against the inferno. His voice cut through the chaos. "You should have stayed dead, Adrian." Adrian fired. Rafe ducked behind cover, returning bursts of bullets that sparked off metal beams. The two men circled, predator and prey, brothers turned enemies. "Why Rafe?" Adrian shouted, advancing through the smoke. "Why betray her? Why betray me?" Rafe's voice wavered, filled with something almost human. "You think I wanted this? Ortega had her killed when she found out. I tried to save her." "You lied to me." Adrian roared. "You let me bury a lie." They clashed, fists, knives, blood, fury. Years of loyalty and love shattered in seconds. Each strike was heavy with history, each wound a confession. The walkway groaned under their weight, sparks raining from above. Finally, Rafe stumbled, bleeding from a gash across his chest. Adrian raised his gun, trembling, torn between vengeance and the memory of the man he once loved like a brother. Rafe's eyes met his. "Go ahead," he spat. "Finish what the desert started." Adrian hesitated. The roar of the flames filled the silence. Then he lowered the gun. "You don't get the easy way out," he said coldly. "You're going to live long enough to watch your empire turn to ash." He turned to leave, but Rafe's voice stopped him. "She's alive," he said weakly. Adrian froze. "Isabela. I thought she was dead too, but Ortega kept her. She's his leverage now. A ghost in his palace." Before Adrian could respond, the walkway exploded. The blast hurled him off the platform, slamming him into the sand below. When he looked up through the smoke, Rafe was gone, swallowed by the fire. Lucía dragged Adrian to his feet. "We have to go." As they ran into the desert night, the refinery behind them collapsed in a tower of flame. Adrian turned once, watching the inferno consume everything. The lies, the guilt, the scars of the sand. He clenched his fist. If Isabela was alive, the war had just begun. The desert at night was a living thing, breathing, watching, waiting. Under the cold glow of the moon, Adrian Cruz and Lucía Vega trudged through the endless dunes, their silhouettes small against the expanse of sand and silence. The refinery's inferno still burned behind them, painting the horizon blood red. Each step was agony. Each breath tasted like smoke and vengeance. Lucia's arm was grazed from shrapnel, her movements slow but steady. Adrian, hardened by war and loss, walked with the calm of a man who'd already died once. His mind replayed Rafe's final words like a curse. "She's alive. Isabela's alive." But the desert doesn't give second chances easily. By dawn, the two reached La Fortaleza del Sol, Ortega's stronghold, a vast fortress carved into sandstone cliffs, half buried in dust and guarded by men who would kill their own shadows for gold. Drones circled above like vultures. Trucks rumbled through the canyon's mouth. Adrian raised his binoculars. 2 watchtowers for sniper nests, patrol rotation every 6 minutes. "The east wall is weakest." Lucía nodded. "That's where they bring in the trucks. We move when the next one enters." Adrian glanced at her, exhaustion etched deep into her face, yet her eyes burned with the same quiet fury that had kept him alive this long. "Lucía," he said softly, "you don't have to see how this ends." She looked back at him. "After everything I've seen, Cruz? I need to." They infiltrated the compound under the cover of a sandstorm, nature itself masking their vengeance. Dust whipped through the air, obscuring gunfire and footsteps. The guards never stood a chance. One by one they fell, blades in the dark, suppressed shots swallowed by the storm's howl. Adrian's movements were poetry and violence. Every strike deliberate, every motion silent. Lucía followed close, her aim steady despite the trembling in her hands. They breached the central hall, a cathedral of greed and blood. Gold idols, drug crates, and stolen relics lined the walls. The floor shimmered with spilled liquor and gasoline. And at the far end of the chamber, sitting upon a throne carved from desert stone, was Don Ortega, the Serpent of the Sands himself. He rose slowly, draped in white silk and arrogance, his face half hidden behind mirrored aviators. "Adrian Cruz," he said, voice smooth as oil. "I wondered when the dead would walk through my doors." Adrian's gaze was steel. "Where is she?" Ortega smiled, snapping his fingers. From behind him, 2 guards dragged a woman into the open. Isabela Cruz, alive but barely. Her wrists were bound, her face bruised, her spirit dimmed but unbroken. When her eyes met Adrian's, time stopped. "Adrian," she whispered. His gun trembled. All the blood, the pain, the years, every ounce of rage drained into that one moment of disbelief. Ortega stepped closer, circling them like a snake. "She's been useful to me. You see, loyalty is a desert flower, rare, fragile. Your sister tried to uproot mine. So I planted her here instead." Lucía raised her weapon, but Ortega's guards appeared instantly, rifles aimed. A standoff, sand, steel, and souls on the edge of ruin. Adrian's voice broke the silence. "This ends tonight." Ortega chuckled. "It always does." The gunfire erupted like thunder. Lucía rolled to cover, firing in precise bursts. Adrian charged forward, cutting through guards with surgical fury. Ortega retreated toward the back chamber, dragging Isabela by the arm. Adrian pursued. Every corridor became a battlefield. Flames from ruptured fuel lines painted the walls orange. Smoke mixed with sand until the world blurred into chaos. He reached the final chamber, Ortega's war room. Stacks of money burned on metal tables. Maps of routes and territories curled into ash. And in the center, Ortega stood behind Isabela, pistol to her temple. "Drop it, Cruz," he barked. Adrian froze. The weight of his weapon suddenly felt heavier than ever. "You kill me," Ortega sneered, "and she dies with me." Isabela's voice broke through the tension. "Don't listen to him, Adrian. Do it." Her defiance made Ortega's hand twitch, the smallest flicker of fear in his predator's eyes. That was all Adrian needed. He fired, one perfect shot. The bullet shattered Ortega's glasses, the force sending him crashing backward. His gun fired reflexively, grazing Isabela's shoulder. She stumbled, crying out as Ortega collapsed, his blood mixing with the sand blowing through the cracked window. Adrian caught her before she fell. "You're okay. I've got you." Lucía burst in seconds later, limping, covered in soot. "We have to move. The charges are set. This place is coming down." They ran through the collapsing corridors, debris raining down. Behind them, the fortress erupted in flame, a collapsing empire swallowed by the desert that once fed it. Outside, the sandstorm had calmed. The sunrise bled gold over the horizon, bathing the 3 survivors in light. Adrian turned to Isabela, tears streaking his dust-covered face. "I thought I lost you." She smiled weakly. "You did everything I couldn't." Lucía stepped back, watching the siblings embrace, a moment carved from ruin. But the desert was not done taking. A sniper's shot cracked the air. Lucía gasped, the bullet hit her side. "Lucía!" Adrian shouted, catching her as she fell. She smiled faintly, blood staining the sand beneath her. "You saved her, that's enough." Her eyes met his one last time, peace amidst chaos, before they dimmed. The desert wind carried her final breath away. Adrian held her close, trembling. Then he laid her down gently and turned toward the dunes, where Ortega's surviving men were fleeing into the storm. He picked up his rifle. No words, no mercy. By the time the sun reached its peak, the last echoes of the cartel were gone, swallowed by silence. That night, the desert was quiet again. Adrian and Isabela stood over Lucía's grave, marked with a single bullet casing and a desert rose. "She deserved more," Isabela whispered. "She gave everything," Adrian said. "More than I ever did." He looked to the horizon, endless and cruel, and tightened the strap on his rifle. "The desert remembers," he murmured. and so will I. The wind picked up, swirling dust into a ghostly shape that shimmered in the moonlight, as if the desert itself honored their pain. Adrian turned away, leading his sister toward the distant lights of freedom. But far behind them, beneath the buried ruins of Ortega's fortress, a radio crackled to life. A voice, faint but familiar, whispered through the static. "Adrian, it's Rafe. We're not done yet."